sitting here with Sherry Sloan, and we are in Staffordsville. It's outside of Paintsville. It's a beautiful landscape here, beautiful home, and we're here to talk about quilting. And once before, when I was here visiting, I was talking about stories behind the quilt. And Sherry let me know that she was inspired to do a Underground Railroad Quilt for the museum. So Sherry, I just want you to share your inspiration and tell us about, how long you've been sewing, even what inspired you to start sewing and so forth.
Okay. I've not been sewing that long, maybe 5 or 6 years at the most. But once I retired a few years back, of course, I was able to devote more time to it, and I just took an interest in it, and I loved it. And it's just something that I enjoy doing. And through trial and error, I have learned a lot, and I really enjoy it. As far as the Underground Railroad Quilt, I hadn't really thought about doing one, but I was always interested in the Underground Railroad and just how these poor people moved to freedom. I mean, it just always was so interesting to me. So I just started researching it. And then when you mentioned that, I thought, there's my opportunity to even delve more into it and do something that is significant and that means something, and that you would have it for your museum.
Yeah, that's awesome. When I was reading a little bit about it and how Harriet Tubman,
yes,
when she would lead, them to freedom, and the route that they would go and so forth, and these quilts had blocks in it that had messages in it, telling them maybe a certain way to go or what time, to start out or something like that.
Yes.
So the blocks, these quilts had messages built into them.
They called them codes. And the quilts themselves typically had 10 blocks, which is what this quilt will have. It'll be a sampler quilt, and each block will represent a certain quilt that was used. And then what I plan to do at the end, when I present you with the quilt, I want to have something that maybe you can display with it on an easel or something that has each quilt and what each quilt meant. That way people, when they're looking at it, they'll know. But I just found it very interesting. Some of the quilts were like the monkey wrench pattern, for instance. It was like start getting your stuff together, get all your stuff repaired, get all your tools ready, and that was what that meant. A wagon wheel pattern, which is one of the ones I want to use, is let's go. It's time to go. Just different ones. One thing that I thought was really interesting when I was doing my research is their freedom base was in Cleveland, Ohio. That was, did you research that?
Yeah.
And this one particular quilt was a log cabin quilt pattern, and I will use that one too. And if that log cabin, it's a pattern, it's a block that is built around one single block, and then it's built around it. If that pattern had a red light in it, they knew they were there, and it was displayed there. It's just amazing how this little simple system worked.
Right, and that is amazing. When you think about that quilt hanging there with that one little code in it, that they knew if they were passing that way, this was a safe place.
Yes.
This was a safe place.
You remember that hole in this church on Liberty Street?
Yeah. You remember the name of it?
No, I used to go up there to it, but I don't I can't remember
Yeah,
the name
that's
of
where
it.
all the, like I said, that's where all
Was
the
it,
blacks were. Miss Pauline doesn't remember because
It seemed like she said something like Church of God of America. That ring a bell?
I don't know. I can't remember it, but I know I used to go up there.
Well, what do you remember about it?
Not very much right now. I know we just used to sing and preach, and I can't remember who was preaching or anything, you know, but I know I used to go up there to it. Yeah.
Where was it located on Liberty Street?
Okay, then, probably up at the end of it.
Uh-huh. Up at the very
Of
end.
Liberty Street,
You remember what it looked like? What kind of building was it?
Well, it was a white, I know it was a white building. And then it had steps that you go up to it. I remember that.
Was it wooden, brick?
They were
Brick.
Wooden?
wooden.
Okay. Wow.
It was a brick.
Now, Reverend Shanks, what I can remember, and I was gonna see if Sister Katie remember. Reverend Shanks was the pastor of that Holiness Church when I was young, looking in the window, because the church would be so crowded with everybody else. The kids stayed outside to look at in the window, and our thing was making fun of those because they were shouting, the tamarines were going, and the preaching and the singing was, and we were just making, out there mocking them.
That's what kids did.
I mean, because we couldn't go in because it was so crowded. So we would be mocking them. And, like we was playing our tamarines. We would be outside. But I do remember Reverend Shanks. I remember that name. I was going to ask Sister Katie, do you remember a Reverend Shanks, Sister Katie?
Pardon?
A Reverend Shanks.
I remember it very well.
I mean, that's how crowded the church was. So crowded that kids had to stay outside. And the music was unbelievable. The singing, the harmony with the tamarines, because all they had was the tamarines.
They didn't have the washboards back then?
I'm quite sure there was a wash. I didn't see one. I can only remember. I can tell you what I seen was the tamarines and them beating it and all on their legs. And I thought, oh my God. To us, it was just some soulful music. So it was.
Do you remember any of the songs that they would
Cannot remember any of the songs that they were singing. Can't remember any of the songs. But all I know, it was a very joyous occasion. Because all I can remember them women tearing that church, and men. The men shouted just as much as the women shouted, but
Oh yeah, I remember
I was
Mr.
just.
George Fraser used to tear church up.
Oh yeah, up in Jerusalem.
Jerusalem Baptist up in Lothair. Now, what do you remember about that one?
I didn't go up to Jerusalem that much. Jane, Mom was going, and Jane and them were small and would take them up
How
to
they nursed
Jerusalem.
them babies right there in the back.
All I can remember is the Purdue's. You remember the Purdue's? Madeline Purdue, Darnell Purdue, Leon Purdue, how they could have made a gospel record. And Nathaniel Hopkins and his sister Emily Hopkins, and they would sing, and they would didn't have music, but they would harmonize so beautiful. They sound like, to me, they sounded like birds.
Wow.
That was that soulful singing that they would sing. They would. I mean, it was beautiful. The thing about it, we were raised in church.
Yeah.
And that was
Right.
that was our activity. I mean, that was our playtime. That was our activity. That's where you went to meet your friends and girls. That's where you went to see the boys, because that's where they were gonna be in church. Because back in the day, you had no choice but to go to church, and that was your activity. You couldn't wait to go to church because you could see all your friends there. Now, when you were on the inside of that church, there was no talking. There was no moving.
That's right in that church.
And not only your mother would correct you, but everybody else would correct you.
It took
If
our
you had a
village.
child out of order, if your mother was shouting or was doing something, the next woman in the pew would get you and set you down. But
That's why we got a little sense.
so you sit there, you would sit there and behave very well. It's just when we would go out, we would just play, and run. But there was no running around in church. It was no like they do today. Leave the kids alone. Leave them alone. Let them run. No, you had to make them sit down. You sit down. And if a baby was crying or a child was crying, that mother had to get out and take that child out of church. There was no setting in there while the baby was crying, or So it was different. Church was fun. Church was fun, but you also had. You as a child had to learn Bible verses. But we had Camp Nathaniel, where we had to learn verses. And then when you went to Sunday school, they would have, I remember at Mount Zion, they would have, because our brother Eric would win all the time knowing the most Bible verses. And I think it started becoming a competition. They would see how many kids would, and they would just ask you randomly a Bible verse and you would stand up. But we used it, that was, like I said, that was our activity.
Now, where was Mount Zion located?
Mount Zion was located where you see the old library here on High Street. Is that considered High Street, Bluntford? That's where in Bell's Market, there's Hoover Dog, there's the old library, there's Hoover Dog furniture, because Social Security where I worked was there. Bell's Market. Bell's Market. Mount Zion was right there. It was you.
So it was a hill?
It was a hill. You would go up the steps and go to the Mount Zion, sit on top of a hill. And back on that where you see the library and Hoover and all, those were all black people's homes set up on that hill.
Where?
Right behind where Hoover Dawhair's
Memorial Drive.
and right there.
Yeah.
And then Memorial Drive,
Gotcha.
right where the bridge is, you come on, that's where Mount Olive was there.
Yeah.
And Mary Emma's and them, Miss Charity and them mother lived right, there was a parsonage, I believe, and then their home. Right there on Memorial Drive.
And then Roy Higgins lived in there.
Lived in there, sort of up on the hill. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
All that, and then when you went on up
And the Mount Mary Hospital was kind of too.
Mount Mary Hospital was across the street over there now where it's located. Who's got a lawyer's office there?
Wilder.
Was Mount Mary Hospital? No, Mount Mary Hospital was on the other side. It was on the other side. That's where the library is. Mount Mary Hospital, and then on back where Hoover Dawhair's and Bell's, that's where Mount Zion was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you know that where the fire department is now, that it was a razor building?
The razor building.
Blacks on the building.
Did not know that.
That was a razor.
It was
Now,
a 3-story building.
It was right.
And they had high
Yeah.
school. This was before Liberty was built.
Right.
High school on the top floor.
Yeah.
There was a restaurant. And then there was a boarding.
My mother and my father was killed in the Korean War. I didn't even know my father. That's where they lived in the razor building.
Yeah.
Yeah. We would have to walk out of Bluegrass. Well, the Montgomerys were the older, when you're older, so they would take care of the little ones walking to school. Just like we had a bus, but your older ones would walk you out of the hollow up to Liberty Street because you had to walk. And it's just like Mom would dress Quet and I and take us to the Montgomerys, and they would walk us to school. It would be just a trail of kids walking, the Olingers, Glenn and David and All of us just walking to school and didn't think a thing about it. I don't care how, because they didn't call school off.
No.
You put your boots, your raincoats on, and I don't care how dark it was, you had to get out and go to school.
I had them rubber boots then.
Yeah, them rubber boots.
Mount Pilgrim out at Trivy. You remember anything about Mount Pilgrim at Trivy?
And they came by Sunday, so she came to have
Oh.
and
I don't really remember anything. All I can remember, Reverend Guy Olinger being pastor out
Right.
there.
Mm-hmm.
I can only remember going out there for different programs
Yeah.
they would have. But as far as knowing about Trivy,
Yeah.
I don't know anything
Yeah.
about Mountain.
And I know that Brother Dirk was pastor at some point later on.
Yeah,
Later on.
yeah. Now, when years ago, John Flatt was the pastor out.
John Flatt Williams.
Yeah, was that his last name, John
I
Flatt? They
think-
lived down at Wabico.
Yeah, John Flatt Williams.
He was pastor out there.
Mm.
That's when I was a little girl. And now I'm saying that because I heard sitting around grown folks' table when they see you sitting there, you get out. I just remember them talking about John Flatt. So that's something I don't know.
yeah.
I'm just
Okay.
repeating table talk.
Yeah.
Table talk with,
All right.
with the elders.
Well, this is Quilt Talk. This is Quilt-Table Talk.
Okay.
Was he a traveling preacher?
No,
Which
John
one was
Flatt
the
wasn't.
traveling preacher?
Was it Reverend Moorhead? You remember Reverend Moorhead? In fact, married John Flatt Williams' sister. Because you remember we lived, well, you wouldn't.
No.
We lived on Liberty Street, and Reverend Moorhead had, there was we called it the bottom. Because our house was on, you remember the
Big
bottom?
Mhm.
And then there was a restaurant.
bottom.
Who had that restaurant? But anyways, like a little, you know what? That was the church. Because at that time, that Reverend Moorhead
Mhm.
at the bottom, what was Mr. Dewey? What was Mr. Dewey's last name? Combs. Had that restaurant.
That sounds familiar.
Had that restaurant. Well, he had a restaurant. And right in that bottom,
I remember
in the
Mr.
bottom, was a house, which Reverend Moorhead had as a church.
Ah.
Yeah. He was he came, I don't know where Reverend Moorhead came from, but yeah, he
Okay.
came. So we went down there some.
Mhm.
We went down,
Okay.
we went to,
And that was in the Liberty Street.
that was in Liberty
But that
Street.
wasn't the.
I don't think that was the
Holiness
Holiness
Church.
Church.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
So that's
no.
why it's called Big Bottom.
Big Bottom.
Like called Big
Because it's
Bottom.
at the bottom. Because the houses on Liberty Street before urban renewal, they was up on the side of the hill.
Mm.
The
Yeah.
houses was on the side of the hill.
Yeah.
Mm.
So you
That's where
had
Miss
all
Hattie
these
lived, isn't it?
different, you had all these houses. When you go up through Liberty Street, dirt road,
Mhm.
and you just seen houses on top of the hill. I mean, right up on the hill. So then you had the bottom. Yeah, the bottom part where Liberty's school was, Britt Handy store right across
Mhm.
from the schoolhouse.
Mr. Handy's
Right, well,
store.
not across from the schoolhouse, but across from the schoolhouse, which
Uh-huh.
Miss Katie was talking about, was the home economic room.
Hmm.
Of course, I just went to Liberty School 2 years. Don't ask me why, but I was the only one in my family that walked over the hill to Lower Broadway to start integrating Lower Broadway. Don't ask me why. All the rest, my sibling Eric followed me. Eric, my brother
Uh-huh.
Eric.
Uh-huh.
We went to Lower Broadway,
Mm.
so I didn't stay in Liberty.
Mhm.
Don't ask me why.
Mhm.
My mother didn't say that I couldn't.
Mhm.
She didn't object. She just let me walk. Little girl, just walk up the hill, and because we had to walk.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had to walk to the school.
Well,
Well, Billy had to know.
you're a trendsetter.
Yeah. Don't ask me why. I don't know why I did that. I don't. I can't remember why I would.
Mhm.
I don't know why I would leave Liberty. I don't know, but I did. So, then my brother, my oldest brother, and Eric, and he stayed in trouble.
You had to be like the little girl that was the first one to integrate. You know, you always see that picture in Alabama.
Yeah,
You know, she's walking to class and she's escorted by the state troopers.
Yeah.
Of course, you wasn't escorted
I wasn't.
by
No,
state.
no. I just remember running to Miss Metcalf. I had Miss Metcalf as a teacher. Eric had Miss Willoughby in the first grade, and he was a little rumptious, little rowdy little boy. And all I could remember is Miss Willoughby taking him and putting him on her lap and just talking to him. Loved him. I said, I've never seen, and just talking to him. And I thought, oh, because I don't know, we were just protective. Although I'm just 2 years old, we were so protective of our siblings, And he didn't do that, and I ain't seen nothing. But he didn't do that, whatever. But she was so. I just remember how loving she was to Eric.
Yeah.
To just and then Miss Metcalf, how mean she was to everybody. You remember Miss Metcalf?
She was scared. We thought she
lived
was a
up there on
witch.
Oak Hurst.
I know.
We thought she was a witch.
But in every skit that they had, I was in it. She put me in every, I don't care what it, little elves, we are 5 little elves. I was one of the elves. We baked great big billy goat gruff. Bert Collins was the billy goat. But what I'm saying, we didn't know, we probably was being discriminated against, but we didn't even know it.
Yeah.
We didn't know it. We were children, and they involved us in things, but we didn't have a parent. Mom didn't come out to check to see what was going on with us in class. So I'm quite sure the things that my brother was accused of, he really didn't do. And so not only him, I can only speak to him. I'm talking about the rest of them. I can only speak of Eric. And but I don't know if I'm just in a daze. I never remember being discriminated against. I said I don't remember. I didn't say I wasn't. I don't remember being discriminated against.
All right.
As far as me just blatantly being discriminated against being out there. So
Yeah.
probably just didn't have enough sense
now.
I didn't. I didn't. We played with kids that wanted to play with us, and those that didn't want to play with us. Because you got to remember, back then the black population was large then. So we played. We played with each other. We played with each other, and that's just like in high school. We just had so many black students that we just hung with each other. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
See, for me, it was a little different because by the time I was in, say, elementary school, I had more white friends than I did black friends.
Yeah.
And that's strange.
Yeah, but then you have to consider too. When I was coming up, the families were strong. There was 10 and 12 kids in a family, so you just stayed in school with
And
just
things changed from your generation
to
mine.
and then people started having less children.
Yeah.
And they started leaving. That's when
They started leaving.
Yeah.
Our mother, I don't know, mother worked on Oakhurst. There was the Hardys and the Goodlets. I went to school with Margaret Goodlet and Elizabeth Hardy. I was in their classes. So my mother would work so many hours at one. But anyway, I wanted to go on Oakhurst to play with Margaret and Elizabeth. Mom didn't want me to go, I guess, but I aggravated her. Usually no is no, but she allowed me to go with her this particular day. So I go up there to play with Margaret Goodlet, because that's who she's working with, Bessie. I went to play with her, Goodlet, Margaret. And I went in the house. She never came out of her room. I wind up playing with her baby sister. What's the baby sister name? Paula
that passed
Goodlet.
away.
I wind up playing with her, had more fun with her. But what I'm saying, that's when I knew, oh, these people don't like me. You know, I'm in class with them, and they're cordial and nice. But when it come to me wanting to play with them, that was no.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, so I gotta back up. That's the first time that I seen that, oh, they don't want to play with me because I'm black.
Different.
Because I'm different. Yeah. But her little sister played with me, but she wouldn't. She was my age, and I thought I was gonna go hang out in her room. Who would have? Because I just thought that. But my mind, oh, okay, I see. And Mother said, Rebecca Lynn, you found out, didn't you? So I don't know if Mom allowed me to come up there to do that to see, because I'd aggravated her, so I don't know. But Little May was just, she was just a strong woman. Yes, I am.
All right.
I'm done.
Keep here talking and talking.
I know, but when you start talking, you start reminiscing, you want to just tell it, you know. Because then I got to thinking the history of Liberty Street is just about the older ones, Liberty High. Who's left? Who's left?